Hello and welcome to the castle. We're located just a couple blocks from historic downtown Marietta here at 418 4th Street. My name is Scott Britton. I'm the executive director here at the castle. The house you see behind me, and we're going to take a little small mini tour of that, of a couple of rooms today, was originally built in 1855 by Colonel Melvin Clark, a local lawyer and attorney here in Marietta. Went through a number of different owners throughout the years until 1994 when it was converted into a historic house museum. And today what we're going to do is take you through a couple of different rooms on a little mini tour, and hopefully you folks will enjoy it. You can also join us for a number of different historical programming throughout the year. So if you want to join me, we're going to go ahead and go on inside. Before I turn you over to Kyle, I just wanted to give you a little bit of an informational spot for us, how to contact us for a full tour or to contact us about some of our programming. Our website is www.mariettacastle.org, or you can call our phone number to arrange a tour now or sometime in the future. So what I'm going to do is turn you over to Kyle Yoho, who is our educational director, and he'll take you on that little mini tour. Thank you, and enjoy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kyle Yoho, and I am the Education Director here at the Castle. Since we're doing a special tour for you, I decided to wear period-appropriate attire. I'm not sure how much Scott told you about our history of our house, but the house that we're standing in right now was built in 1855 and lived in up to 1974. And we became a museum in 1994. Operating tours out of here ever since. So one of the neat things about the castle is that if you come for a tour, you get a different experience with every tour guide. So my tours are different than Scott's tours or any of our number of volunteers. So all of our volunteers learn the facts about the house, but they are able to follow their own interests in telling the public about the history of this home. So as you saw from the outside of the house, and as you see now that you're in the interior, in our front hall right now, you see all the woodwork, all of it being red oak, and how big our hallway is. And all of that is to show the opulence of the house. So it's showing you that, hey, rich people live here, and you should know that they're rich. When you look at the front of the house, when you come into the house, you know that people of well-to-do means are living here. So we're going to go tour a couple of the rooms downstairs today, and those are the rooms that are very much to show off. When you come here for a tour, you can actually see our upstairs bedrooms and the back of the house, which is more of the working rooms of the house, which some of our patrons find to be a lot more interesting. I actually like our summer kitchen the best, so you get to see those when you come to the tour, but not today. We're going to show you the fancy rooms. So when we opened the museum in 1994, the last owner had passed away in 74. So all the items in the house were actually sold off. She had no heirs, so everything was sold out of the castle in a big estate sale. And so none of the items that might have been here from maybe the time of 1855 when it was first built, none of those items survived. However, over time, being a museum, we have items that were donated back to us. So items that came from the house were donated back. But a lot of the furnishings that you see are actually items that most of our of local significance help furnish and show off the house in our kind of our mid to late 1800s time frame. Another interesting thing about the house is you will see both restoration and renovation. So a lot of what you see in this area is restoration that Mr. and Mrs. Bosley did, Stuart and his sister Bertlin, that they did to the house from the late 70s all the way up to when Mr. Bosley passed away in the 90s. So a lot of what you see is restoration, but there are very significant changes that he made to the house that we refer to as renovations. And one of those is right below my feet here. This is not a real marble floor, and it's definitely not the floor that would have been in here at the time. However, where the light hits it, which I'm not sure we can pick up on camera, but you can actually see the boards underneath. And when we go into our sitting room, you'll see what these boards actually look like. So with a wood floor, much of a darker room actually because of the wood floor, but the kind of linoleum marble is not period 1855 or any time families lived in the house. So another good example that we have of items that were donated to the house are actually in this bookcase here, this cabinet here. The plate and the soup tureen are items that were owned by Jessie. And Jessie was actually our last owner of the house. She lived here, I want to say longer than any other owners. She passed away 5 days short of her 100th birthday. And she's the one that had no heirs and ended up having to sell everything from the house to nieces of hers. But what's the soup tureen is in is a bookcase with the C on it. Now, Melvin Clark built the house, but that's not for Melvin Clark. That's actually for the Sisler family. And for those of you that are local history aficionados, you might know that Sisler is the big brick manufacturer here in Marietta. And so their big house, which is above Giant Eagle now, still stands. This came from that home. So this is an example of a donation that helps us furnish the house. Another neat thing about our front hall is Mr. Bosley put this in. This is a large lithograph. It is wallpaper, 3 sections of wallpaper that he put in, but it shows you the lithograph that was in the 1875 newspaper compendium, Atlas, 1875 Atlas, that shows the house when it was owned by John Newton. And right below that is this instrument here. Now, usually when we have tours that are in person, we will ask you if you think it's a organ or if you think it's a piano. So I'm just going to let you kind of think on your own if you think it's an organ or a piano. All right, you have your answer. Now, if I open up this, what don't we see? We don't see strings and we don't see hammers. And if I close it and I pump it down here, that tells us it's an organ. So this was made by the Stevens Organ and Piano Company out of Harvard. So on the west side, they had a very large manufacturing factory for these, which actually didn't last very long. It was destroyed in the 1913 flood. So we have one of those few examples of Stevens Organ and Piano Company instrument. The next room we're going to go into is our sitting room. So follow me. All right, so we got to show you a little bit of the room. This room, obviously called the sitting room, because this is where you came and sat. If you were a guest to the house that knocked on the front door, you would have been greeted by a servant who brought you into this room, and you would sit and you would wait to see who you came to visit with. So if you're here to see Mr. Davis or Mrs. Davis, you would sit in this room and wait for them. It also operated as sort of a living room for its time, where family members would have some leisure time, spend some time together. It was also a workspace, so if Mr. Davis or Mr. Newton, when they were living here, had work to do, they might have done it in this room as well as sort of a study. We have an example behind you of a Royal Glass display, Royal Glass being a glass manufacturer here in Marietta. And then the rest of this room is furnished like it would have been when the family lived here. And so one of those interesting furnishings that you see a lot of Victorian houses is right over here next to me. And this is what is called a fainting couch. Now, the reason it gets that name is because over time, people have known that these couches were what Victorian women wearing those tight corsets, that's what they would have fainted into because it was too confining. It was blocked their airflow. So women fainted into these couches, giving them the name fainting couches. However, that's a bit of a myth because even though women could easily faint into them, these are actually couches that were designed by the Greeks and Romans. And Victorians really love to look back at that design, and as you can tell, the architecture as well. And this is something that they would have brought back as a very, very fancy piece to have in your home. Adjoining the sitting room is the library. It would have been separated by 2 large red oak doors here. And so in our library, we have two bookcases that match the Sisler bookcase that we saw in the front hall. The couch over here was actually owned by Jesse, so that's one of those pieces that were brought back to us. And one of the interesting pieces that we have here is our field desk, which was owned by Captain William Holden, who's pictured here. Now, Captain Holden lived in Marietta, joined the Civil War when he was young, and eventually was promoted to rank of an officer, and he served as a quartermaster in the war. And this desk was actually what was given to him as a present for his service. So with this desk, this is what we like to tell our school groups, that this is actually something that that you were, if we like to tell our school groups, this is the first version of a laptop computer, because you could write your documents and store them and take them with you anywhere you went. There's a nice little handle on here that you take this with you everywhere. One of the interesting stories that got passed down to us is Jessie. This was Jessie's favorite room. Jessie, even though she was living up to 1974, she very much kept old school traditions. So she had a live-in nurse who kind of acted as the servant of the house. And that nurse would allow people to come into this room. She would seat them as a servant would have a number of years before Jessie's time. And Jessie was actually usually in this room and with the doors closed. And that's actually when she would decide whether or not she wanted to visit with them that day, based on their conversation with the nurse. If she didn't want to see them, she would actually make her exit out through what was then a coat closet, and then through another bathroom area. And then the nurse would have to make some sort of excuse for Jessie not being able to see them that day. We don't know if that's true, but it's an interesting story that got passed down. But we do know Jessie was very much a very well-to-do lady who wanted to keep up appearances as best as she could. So we have two other rooms we're going to show you. We should have time for, and we're going to go to our dining room and our parlor. So if you follow me. We're just going to go around the room and show off some of the things that we have in our dining room space. All right. So one of the interesting things about the dining room is this chandelier that's here. The proper term for it, though, is gasolier. And this was because that this chandelier was actually when it was first hooked up, it would have been utilized with gas. So the gas that ran through your house would have lit this room. Now with the invention of electric came through, and more important homes like this were able to get electrification, they didn't really know how electrification was going to work. They didn't know if it was just a fad or if it was going to last very long. So they kept the keys and the functioning for gas. Obviously, they turned the gas off for it, but they ran wires through and screwed in light bulbs. And so, as we know, electric stayed on. So they didn't have to tear those wires back out. And what you're able to see now is our electrifying gas layer. But it's kind of like one of those updates on your smartphone. You don't know when you really want to update it or download it. So this was something that they weren't quite sure was going to last very long. Now the last room we're going to see is one of the most important rooms of our house in terms of being able to show off the opulence of the home, and that is our parlor. Now this is the most formal room of the house, and this is the room that they would have done entertaining in. Also, it's the room that they would have had kind of less the fun things to think about. Like this is where the funerals for the home happened in the bay window area. Just about every owner for the home ended up being laid out here, having their wake here, and then being taken to the cemetery where they were Barry, all the way up to Jesse's time. A couple interesting things I'll point out is these are shutters that were designed into the home. They're inset shutters. So when we fold them out on each side, they would cover the windows. And the other interesting thing that was put into the home a little bit later was our mantle over here. And this mantle is, it looks like it's made of marble, but it's actually made of slate. And that was a design thing that was done in the mid to late 1800s called scagliola. And so this is kind of one of the more interesting things for the house. So I wanted to wrap up there, but I do want to mention one thing. If you're interested in helping our functions out, helping out our museum overall, especially during this time of COVID-19 and pandemics, we would very much love it if we could have a donation. Our donations can be made through our website, which is marietta.org/support/give. And if you visit our website, you can also see the many events and functions that we do here at the house. Our museum is very active. We are looking into more virtual opportunities, just like this one, to present to you today. So we want to thank you very much for your time. We hope you enjoyed your small tour of the house and we're able to come by sometime to see the full house. Also, if you are interested in volunteering, we can always take more volunteers to do something just like I did, just to share the history and interesting features of a historic house like this. So again, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you so much. The house is absolutely gorgeous from what we already saw. Absolutely. How many